Maria Santos held her baby daughter close to her chest as the cold metal doors of St. Michael's Church slammed shut behind her. The sound echoed through the empty plaza like a gunshot. She could still hear the voices inside, continuing with the baptism ceremony as if nothing had happened. As if she had never been there at all. Baby Sophia was only 3 months old. She had been born on New Eden Colony, a human settlement floating in space near the edge of known galaxy. Sophia had her mother's dark eyes and her father's gentle smile. She was a beautiful, healthy baby who deserved to be welcomed into the church. Like any other child, but the church leaders had other ideas. Maria's hand shook as she adjusted the white baptism gown that Sophia wore. She had spent weeks making it by hand, using the finest fabric she could afford. The tiny dress had delicate lace around the collar and small pearl buttons down the back. Maria had dreamed of this day for months, imagining how proud she would feel watching her daughter receive her first blessing. Instead, she stood alone on the church steps, rejected and humiliated. The problem was not with Sophia. The problem was with Sophia's father. Kai Chen was Maria's husband of 1 year. He was a good man who worked hard in the asteroid mines that surrounded New Eden Colony. But Kai was different from other people. Years of working in dangerous space environments had forced him to get genetic modifications to survive. His lungs had been changed to process different types of air. His bones had been strengthened to handle the low gravity of asteroids. His eyes had been enhanced to see in the dark tunnels where he worked. These changes made Kai stronger and better at his job. They also made him an outcast in the eyes of many people on New Eden Colony. The colony had been founded by humans who believed in keeping their race pure and unchanged. They welcomed people like Maria, who came from Earth with no modifications at all. But they looked down on people like Kai, calling them changed ones or impure. When Maria married Kai, she knew some people would not approve. She did not care. She loved Kai for who he was inside, not for what his body looked like. But she had not expected the hatred to extend to their innocent baby. Father Johnson, the head priest of St. Michael's Church, had been clear about his position. We cannot allow a child of mixed blood to be baptized in our sacred space, he had said when Maria came to arrange the ceremony. The church must remain pure. If we allow this, where will it end? Maria had argued with him for weeks. She had shown him that Sophia was completely human, with no modifications at all. She had brought medical records proving that her daughter was as normal as any other baby on the colony. But Father Johnson would not change his mind. It is not about the child, he had said. It is about what she represents. If we baptize her, we are saying that mixing with the changed ones is acceptable. We cannot send that message. Maria had begged him to reconsider. She had offered to donate extra money to the church. She had promised to attend every service and volunteer for every event, but nothing worked. Father Johnson's decision was final. The worst part was that many of the church members supported him. These were people Maria had known for years, people she had considered friends. When she walked through the colony's main street, some of them would cross to the other side to avoid her. Others would whisper and point when they thought she was not looking. Mrs. Patterson, who ran the local grocery store, had been especially cruel. You made your choice when you married that thing, she had said loud enough for everyone to hear. Now you have to live with the consequences. But Maria had also found unexpected support. Dr. Lisa Rodriguez, who worked at the colony's medical center, had offered to perform a private blessing for Sophia. The church does not own the right to welcome children into the world, she had said. Several other families had offered to attend the private ceremony. Even some church members had privately expressed their disagreement with Father Johnson's decision. They were too afraid to speak up publicly, but they let Maria know they supported her in quiet ways. Mrs. Chun, an elderly woman who attended every Sunday service, had slipped Maria a note saying, "All babies are blessed by God, no matter what the church says." Now, standing on the church steps with Sophia in her arms, Maria felt more alone than ever. Through the stained glass windows, she could see the ceremony continuing inside. Other families were celebrating their children while she was locked out. The injustice of it made her stomach turn. Sophia began to cry, perhaps sensing her mother's distress. Maria rocked her gently and whispered soft words in her ear. "It's okay, baby," she said. "We don't need them. We have each other, and we have Daddy, and that's enough." But even as she said the words, Maria felt her heart breaking. She had grown up in this church. She had been baptized here herself 25 years ago. She had dreamed of continuing the tradition with her own children. Now that dream was shattered. The plaza around the church was usually busy on Sunday mornings, but today it was almost empty. Most people were either inside the church or staying away from what they knew would be a difficult situation. The few people who walked by avoided eye contact with Maria. Some hurried past as if her presence made them uncomfortable. Maria was about to turn and walk home when she noticed someone approaching from across the plaza. The man was tall and well-dressed, wearing an expensive suit that marked him as someone important. His gray hair was perfectly styled, and his shoes were polished to a shine. He walked with the confidence of someone used to being in charge. As he got closer, Maria recognized him. It was Alexander Kane, the richest man on New Eden Colony. His company had helped fund the colony's construction, and his investments kept the local economy running. He was someone Maria had only seen from a distance before, usually at public events or on the colony's news broadcasts. She wondered what he was doing here, walking toward her with such purpose in his step. She clutched Sophia tighter and prepared to move away, assuming he was coming to tell her to leave the church grounds. Rich people like Alexander Kane usually supported the colony's traditional values, but as he got closer, Maria saw something unexpected in his eyes. It was not anger or disapproval. It was sadness and maybe even kindness. He stopped a few feet away from her and looked at Sophia with a gentle expression. "That was wrong," he said simply. "What they did to you in there was completely wrong." Alexander Kane stood before Maria Santos with his hands clasped behind his back. His expensive suit looked out of place in the church plaza, but his expression was warm and understanding. Maria had expected him to ask her to leave or to support the church's decision. Instead, his first words had surprised her completely. "That was wrong," he repeated, his voice carrying the weight of someone used to making important decisions. "What they did to you in there was completely wrong." Maria shifted Sophia in her arms, not sure how to respond. She had never spoken to someone as powerful as Alexander Kane before. He owned half the businesses on New Eden Colony and had enough money to buy anything he wanted. Why would he care about her problems? Alexander noticed her uncertainty and took a step back to give her more space. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should introduce myself. I'm Alexander Kane. I saw what happened through the church's public viewing system. I was watching from my office." "You were watching the baptism?" Maria asked, confused. Alexander nodded. "I make it a point to observe important community events. The church streams their ceremonies so family members across the galaxy can watch. I saw when Father Johnson asked you to leave. I saw the look on your face." His voice grew harder. "And I saw how the other church members just sat there and let it happen." Sophia made a small sound, and Alexander's expression softened immediately. "She's beautiful," he said. "What's her name?" "Sophia," Maria replied, feeling some of her nervousness fade. "Sophia Chun Santos, a lovely name for a lovely child." Alexander looked back toward the church doors. "Tell me, Maria, what exactly did Father Johnson say to you when he refused to baptize her?" Maria felt her anger returning as she remembered the conversation. "He said Sophia couldn't be baptized because of who her father is. He said the church has to remain pure, and that baptizing her would send the wrong message to the colony." Alexander's jaw tightened. "And what message would that be?" "That it's okay to marry someone who has been genetically modified. That it's okay to have children with them." Maria's voice grew stronger as she spoke. But Sophia is completely human. She has no modifications at all. The only thing different about her is that her father works in the asteroid mines. And what's wrong with working in the mines? Alexander asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Nothing, Maria said firmly. Kai is a good man. He works hard to support our family. The modifications he has were necessary for his job. Without people like him, this colony wouldn't survive. We need the minerals he brings back from the asteroids. Alexander nodded slowly. You're absolutely right. The miners are essential to our survival out here. Without them, we'd have no raw materials, no fuel, no way to maintain our systems. He paused, looking thoughtful. I've actually met your husband, Kai Kin, right? He's one of the best workers in the mining fleet. His supervisor speaks very highly of him. Maria felt a surge of pride. You know Kai? I make it my business to know the people who work for my companies. Kai has saved several mining operations from disaster with his quick thinking. His enhanced vision has helped him spot structural problems that other miners miss. His modifications don't make him less human. They make him more valuable to our community. This was not what Maria had expected to hear from one of the colony's elite. She had assumed that wealthy people like Alexander Kane would support the church's position on genetic purity. After all, they were the ones who could afford to avoid dangerous jobs that required modifications. Alexander seemed to read her thoughts. You're wondering why I care about this, he said. Why someone like me will get involved in your situation? Maria nodded, still holding Sophia close. Alexander looked up at the artificial sky above the colony, his expression distant. I lost my family 15 years ago, he said quietly. Pirates attacked the transport ship they were traveling on. My wife Emma and my daughter Rachel were both killed. I'm sorry, Maria said, meaning it. Emma was pregnant at the time, Alexander continued. We were going to have a son. We had already picked out his name, David. He looked back at Maria and Sophia. Watching what happened to you today brought back memories of what I lost. The joy of having a child, the pride of wanting to share that joy with your community. Maria felt tears forming in her eyes. She had not expected this powerful man to be so open about his pain. After I lost them, I threw myself into my work. Alexander said, I built my business, made more money than I could ever spend, gained influence and power. But none of it brought them back. None of it filled the hole they left behind. He stepped closer to Maria, his voice becoming more intense. But today, watching you being rejected by people who should have supported you, I realized something. I've been using my wealth and power for the wrong things. I've been focused on making money instead of making life better for people. What do you mean? Maria asked. Alexander gestured toward the church. This colony was supposed to be a fresh start for humanity, a place where we could build something better than what we left behind on Earth. Instead, we brought our worst impulses with us. We brought prejudice, fear, and hatred. Sophia began to fuss, and Maria rocked her gently. Alexander watched with a sad smile. I want to help you, he said suddenly. Not just with Sophia's baptism, but with changing things here on New Eden. This colony needs to learn that our strength comes from our diversity, not from keeping people apart. Maria stared at him in surprise. Help me how? First, we're going to make sure Sophia gets the welcome she deserves. There are other places on this colony where children can be blessed, places that care more about love than about genetic purity. Alexander's voice grew stronger. But that's just the beginning. I want to challenge the laws and customs that allow this kind of discrimination. You want to fight the church? Maria asked, hardly believing what she was hearing. I want to fight. Ignorance, Alexander corrected. The church is just one part of the problem. The whole colony has accepted these unfair rules for too long. People like your husband risk their lives every day to keep this place running, and they deserve better than being treated as second-class citizens. Alexander reached into his jacket and pulled out a small device. I'm going to call my lawyer right now. We're going to challenge every law, every regulation, every custom that allows people to be treated differently because of their genetics or their jobs. Maria felt a mixture of hope and fear. That sounds dangerous. People here don't like change. Change is never easy, Alexander agreed, but it's necessary. And I have something that most people fighting for change don't have. What's that? Alexander smiled for the first time since approaching her. Enough money to make people listen. The news of Alexander Kane's support for Maria Santos spread through New Eden Colony like wildfire. Within hours of their meeting at the church, everyone was talking about the richest man on the colony taking sides in what many people had thought was a simple religious matter. Lisa Rodriguez was one of the first people to hear about it. She worked as a reporter for the New Eden Daily News, the colony's main information source. Lisa had been covering local stories for 5 years, but she had never seen anything that divided people as much as this issue. Lisa sat in her small office, reviewing the video footage from the church's public viewing system. Alexander Kane had given her permission to use it for her story. She watched Maria being asked to leave, saw the pain on her face, and witnessed Alexander's intervention. It was powerful material that would make people think, but Lisa wanted to do more than just report what happened. She wanted to understand why it happened. She decided to investigate how the colony treated other families like Maria and Kai. Her first stop was the colony's medical center, where Dr. Peter Williams worked as the chief medical officer. Dr. Williams was a quiet man who rarely got involved in political matters, but he had strong opinions about genetic modifications. The whole idea that modifications make someone less human is scientifically ridiculous, Dr. Williams told Lisa as they sat in his office. The changes that minors like Kai Chin receive are purely functional. They help people survive in environments that would kill unmodified humans. Dr. Williams pulled up medical files on his computer screen. "Look at this data," he said, pointing to charts and graphs. "Modified humans are actually healthier in many ways than unmodified ones. They're enhanced. Lungs process oxygen more efficiently. Their strengthened bones don't break as easily. Their improved eyes reduce the risk of accidents. So why do people fear them?" Lisa asked. "Fear of the unknown," Dr. Williams replied. "Most people on this colony have never worked in space. They don't understand what it takes to survive out there. They see the modifications as something alien, something threatening." Lisa's next interview was with Amy Foster, a 20-year-old college student who had started organizing protests in support of Maria and other mixed families. Amy had grown up on New Eden Colony, but she had very different ideas from her parents' generation. "This whole situation is embarrassing," Amy told Lisa as they met in the colony's Central Park. Around them, other young people were making signs for their next demonstration. "We're supposed to be the future of humanity, but we're acting like primitive tribes fighting over who belongs and who doesn't." Amy had collected information about dozens of families on the colony who faced similar discrimination. There was Mark Johnson, whose wife had received modifications to survive a mining accident. Their children were not allowed to join certain sports teams. There was Linda Smith, whose husband had enhanced reflexes from his work on space construction projects. Their family had been asked to leave restaurants and social events. "The older generation acts like genetic modifications are some kind of disease," Amy said. "But these people chose to change their bodies to help build our colony. They deserve respect, not hatred." The protest Amy organized drew over 200 people, mostly young adults and families with modified members. They gathered outside St. Michael's Church, carrying signs that read, "Love has no genetic code, and humanity includes everyone." The demonstration was peaceful, but it sent a clear message that many colonists disagreed with the church's policies. However, not everyone supported the protesters. Father Johnson and his followers organized their own response. Council leader Richard Nash, a powerful politician who had helped write many of the colony's laws, spoke at a counter rally held the same day. We came to New Eden Colony to preserve the best of humanity, Nash told a crowd of several hundred supporters. If we allow our genetic heritage to be diluted, we lose what makes us special. We lose what makes us human. Nash argued that accepting genetic modifications was a slippery slope that would eventually lead to the destruction of the human race. Today they want us to baptize their children, he said. Tomorrow they'll want to modify our children. Where? Does it end? His speech was met with loud applause from people who shared his fears. Many of them were older colonists who remembered Earth before genetic modification became common. They saw New Eden as their last chance to maintain traditional human values. The division in the colony became more obvious every day. Families split apart as children disagreed with their parents. Businesses lost customers as people boycotted. Stores owned by those on the opposite side. The colony's government struggled to maintain order as protests and counter-protests filled the streets. Maria found herself at the center of all this attention, something she had never wanted. She received messages of support from strangers, but also threats from people who blamed her for causing trouble. Some messages were so frightening that Alexander Kane hired security guards to protect her family. I just wanted my daughter to be baptized, Maria told Lisa during an interview. I never meant to start a war. But the war had started, and it was spreading beyond New Eden Colony. News of the conflict reached other human settlements throughout the galaxy. Some colonies sent messages of support for Maria and the protesters. Others praised Father Johnson and Richard Nash for standing up for traditional values. The captain of a trading ship brought news that similar debates were happening on colonies hundreds of light years away. People everywhere are talking about what happened here, he told Lisa. Some places are changing their laws to be more inclusive. Others are making them stricter. Dr. Williams worried about what the conflict was doing to the colony's health and safety. We're so busy fighting each other that we're forgetting about real threats, he warned. Our defense systems need maintenance. Our medical supplies are running low. Our mining operations are falling behind schedule because people are too distracted to work properly. Alexander Kane remained committed to his cause, using his wealth and influence to support legal challenges to discriminatory laws. He hired the best lawyers he could find and filed lawsuits against the colony's government. He also funded community programs designed to bring different groups together. This is about more than one baby's baptism, Alexander told a packed auditorium during a public speech. This is about what kind of society we want to be. Do we want to be a place that judges people by their genetics? Or do we want to be a place that values people for their contributions? The question hung in the air as the colony continued to struggle with its identity. Outside, in the darkness of space, unknown dangers watched and waited for humanity to decide its own fate. 3 weeks after the protests began on New Eden Colony, something unexpected happened. A large spaceship appeared at the edge of the colony's sensor range, requesting permission to dock. The ship was called the Meridian, and it carried visitors from 12 different human colonies across the galaxy. Captain Helen Brooks was the first to step off the ship when it landed at New Eden's main spaceport. She was a tall woman with gray hair and kind eyes, wearing the blue uniform of the Human Colonial Alliance. Behind her came representatives from colonies that most people on New Eden had only heard about in news reports. Alexander Kane met them at the spaceport, curious about why so many important people had come to their small colony. "Welcome to New Eden," he said as Captain Brooks approached. "What brings you so far from home?" "We heard about your situation," Captain Brooks replied. "The story of Maria Santos and her daughter has spread throughout human space. Every colony is talking about what happened here." She gestured to the people behind her. "We've all faced similar problems in our own communities. We came to share what we learned and to help if we can." The first person to speak up was Commander Jake Morrison from the Olympus mining station. He was a big man with scars on his hands from years of dangerous work. 20 years ago, our station almost died because of the same kind of thinking you have here," he told Alexander. We had two groups of people, modified and unmodified, who refused to work together. Jake explained how a massive system failure had threatened to destroy Olympus Station. Our main power core was failing, and we needed someone to go inside the reactor chamber to fix it. The radiation levels were deadly to normal humans. But we had modified workers whose enhanced bodies could survive long enough to make the repairs. What happened? Alexander asked. At first, the unmodified workers refused to let the modified ones risk their lives. They said it was too dangerous. But then the modified workers said they wouldn't help unless they were treated as equals afterward. Jake shook his head. While they argued, the reactor got worse and worse. How did you solve it? A modified engineer named Carol went into the reactor anyway, Jake said. She saved the station, but she died from radiation poisoning 2 days later. Her sacrifice made everyone realize how stupid the fighting had been. After that, we changed our laws to treat everyone equally. Another visitor, Dr. Nancy Green from the Paradise Agricultural Colony, had a different story but the same message. Our colony grows food for 6 other settlements, she said. We have modified farmers whose enhanced senses can detect plant diseases early, and unmodified farmers who are experts at traditional growing methods. Dr. Green explained how prejudice had divided their farming community. The unmodified farmers claimed the modified ones were unnatural. The modified farmers said the unmodified ones were primitive. Crops started failing because they wouldn't share information with each other. What changed things? Maria asked. She had come to the spaceport with Sophia to meet the visitors. Famine, Dr. Green said simply. A plant virus attacked our main grain crop. Neither group could stop it alone. The unmodified farmers knew traditional methods that could slow the spread, but the modified farmers could detect which plants were infected before symptoms showed. They had to work together or everyone would starve. Story after story followed the same pattern. The visitors came from colonies that had faced division between modified and unmodified humans. Some had been split by religious differences, others by economic competition, still others by simple fear and misunderstanding. But all of them had learned the same lesson. Unity made them stronger. Lisa Rodriguez interviewed the visitors for her newspaper, amazed by what she heard. It seems like every human colony goes through this problem, she told Captain Brooks. Most do, the captain agreed. It's natural for people to fear what they don't understand. But the colonies that survive and prosper are the ones that learn to overcome that fear. Captain Brooks had brought something else with her, intelligence reports from the outer edges of human space. She met privately with Alexander Kane and the colony security chief to share information that worried her. We've been monitoring alien communications for months, she told them in a secure conference room. There's a hostile alien empire called the Zephyrians that has been studying human colonies, looking for weaknesses they can exploit. The security chief, a former military officer named Tom Baker, leaned forward. What kind of weaknesses? Internal division, Captain Brooks replied. They target colonies where humans are fighting among themselves. Their strategy is to wait until a colony tears itself apart, then move in to claim the territory. She showed. Them intercepted alien messages translated into human language. The reports described New Eden Colony as prime target due to social instability and ready for conquest phase within 6 months. Alexander felt his blood run cold. They're planning to attack us? Not yet, Captain Brooks said. But they're watching. If your colony continues to fight internally, you'll be moved to their priority invasion list. Tom Baker studied the intelligence reports. How do they choose their targets? They look for colonies where people spend more time fighting each other than preparing for external threats, Captain Brooks explained. Divided communities have weak defenses, poor communication, and low morale. They're easy to conquer. She pulled up a star map showing several human colonies marked in red. These settlements have already fallen to the Zephyrians. They all had one thing in common. They were split by internal conflicts when the attacks came. The news was sobering. Alexander realized that the colony's religious and political divisions were not just causing social problems. They were creating a security threat that could destroy everyone. Captain Brooks offered a solution. The colonies that have successfully defended against alien attacks are the ones with strong unity. When people work together, they build better defenses, share information more effectively, and fight harder to protect their homes. She showed examples of colonies that had defeated alien invasions through cooperation. The New Horizons settlement fought off 3 different alien attacks because their modified and unmodified populations worked as a team. The modified people used their enhanced abilities for reconnaissance and combat, while the unmodified people handled logistics and strategy. Another example was the Frontier Station, which had survived a year-long siege by working together. Their modified engineers designed new weapons, while their unmodified mechanics built them. Their modified pilots flew dangerous missions, while their unmodified controllers coordinated the battles. The message was clear. Human colonies survived by embracing their diversity, not by fighting over it. That evening, Alexander called an emergency meeting of the colony's leadership. He invited Maria and Kai, Father Johnson and Richard Nash, Amy Foster and her student protesters, and anyone else who had been involved in the conflict. "We have a bigger problem than our religious differences," Alexander announced to the packed meeting room. "While we've been fighting each other, a real enemy has been watching us, waiting for us to become weak enough to attack." He shared the intelligence reports and the stories from the visiting colonies. The room fell silent as people realized the implications. "We can continue fighting among ourselves," Alexander said, "and probably end up conquered or destroyed. Or we can learn from colonies that have faced the same challenges and found solutions." The choice was clear, but making it would require every person in the room to set aside their prejudices and fears. The emergency meeting lasted until late into the night. People who had been enemies just hours before sat around the same table, trying to understand what the alien threat meant for their colony. Father Johnson sat next to Kai Chun, the man he had called impure. Richard Nash found himself listening carefully to Amy Foster, the young woman whose protest he had opposed. "We need to make a choice," Alexander Kane said as the meeting continued. "We can keep fighting each other and wait for the aliens to attack, or we can learn to work together and build a stronger defense." Father Johnson was the first to speak. His voice was quiet and uncertain. "I believe I was protecting our community by keeping our traditions pure. But if our traditions make us weak against real enemies, then maybe I was wrong." Richard Nash looked uncomfortable, but he nodded slowly. "The intelligence reports are clear. Divided colonies fall to alien attacks. United colonies survive." He paused. "I would rather change our laws and see our people conquered." The meeting ended with an agreement to try working together. It would not be easy, and many people would need time to change their minds. But the threat from the Zephyrian Empire had made everyone realize that their survival depended on unity. Alexander Kane used his wealth to create the Unity Foundation the next week. The foundation provided legal help for families facing discrimination, built community centers where all people could gather, and started education programs to help people understand genetic modifications. Maria Santos became one of the foundation's first success stories. With legal support from Alexander's lawyers, she challenged the church's ban on baptizing children from mixed families. The case went to the colony's Supreme Court, where judges ruled that religious organizations could not deny services based on genetic status. But the real change began in an unexpected way. When baby Sophia became seriously ill, it started with a fever that would not go away. Maria took Sophia to the colony's main medical center, where Dr. Peter Williams ran tests to find out what was wrong. The results were frightening. Sophia has a rare genetic condition called neurological degeneration syndrome, Dr. Williams told Maria and Kai in his office. It affects the connections between brain cells. Without treatment, it can cause permanent damage or death. Maria felt her world collapse. Can you treat it? Dr. Williams shook his head sadly. The surgery required is incredibly difficult. It involves working on nerve pathways that are smaller than human hair. The slightest mistake could paralyze her or worse. Then what can we do? Kai asked, holding Maria's hand tightly. There is one option, Dr. Williams said carefully. Dr. Nathan Cross works at the medical station orbiting Jupiter. He specializes in this exact condition. But there's something you should know about him. What? Maria asked. Dr. Cross is heavily modified. His eyes have been enhanced with microscopic vision that lets him see individual nerve cells. His hands have been fitted with precision controls that allow him to perform surgery no unmodified human could attempt. He saved dozens of children with this condition. Maria and Kai looked at each other. The irony was not lost on them. The same kind of genetic modifications that had caused their daughter to be rejected by the church might now be the only thing that could save her life. How long do we have? Maria asked. 2 weeks at most, Dr. Williams replied. After that, the damage may be irreversible. Alexander Kane immediately offered to pay for Dr. Cross to come to New Eden Colony. Within 3 days, the modified doctor arrived on a fast medical transport ship. He was a small man with silver eyes that reflected light in an unusual way, and his hands moved with impossible precision when he examined Sophia. The condition is advanced but treatable, Dr. Cross told the worried parents. The surgery will take about 6 hours. I'll need to make over 300 microscopic connections in her brain. It's delicate work, but I've done it many times before. Word of Sophia's condition spread quickly through the colony. Even people who had opposed genetic modifications found themselves hoping that Dr. Cross would succeed. Many had never seen a heavily modified human before, and they were surprised by how normal he seemed. The surgery took place in the colony's main hospital, with dozens of people waiting outside for news. Father Johnson was there, along with Richard Nash and many church members. Amy Foster and her student protesters waited alongside older colonists who had previously called for stricter genetic laws. Dr. Cross worked for 7 hours, using tools that looked more like tiny robots than medical instruments. His enhanced eyes allowed him to see nerve pathways that were invisible to normal vision. His modified hands moved with the steadiness of a machine, but the judgment of an experienced surgeon. When he finally emerged from the operating room, Dr. Cross looked exhausted but pleased. The surgery was successful, he announced to the waiting crowd. Sophia should make a complete recovery. The cheers that erupted came from people on both sides of the genetic modification debate. In that moment, seeing their community's youngest members saved by the very technology they had feared, many minds began to change. Richard Nash was the first to approach Dr. Cross. Thank you, he said simply. You saved that little girl's life. Dr. Cross smiled tiredly. It's what I do. My modifications allow me to help children that no one else can save. That's why I chose to change my body. Father Johnson stepped forward next. I owe you an apology, he said to Dr. Cross. I let my fear cloud my judgment. You've shown me that genetic modifications can be a gift from God, not a curse. The biggest surprise came from Richard Nash's daughter, Grace Nash. She was a 25-year-old teacher who had always supported her father's conservative views. But watching Dr. Cross save Sophia's life had changed her perspective completely. The next day, Grace Nash requested to speak at the colony council meeting. Her father sat in the front row, not knowing what she planned to say. For years, I believed what my father taught me about genetic modifications, Grace began, her voice clear and strong. I thought they made people less human, less worthy of respect. But yesterday, I watched Dr. Nathan Cross perform a miracle. She looked directly at her father. If we reject people who are different, we reject the very abilities that could save our children's lives. We reject the innovations that keep our colony running. We reject the diversity that makes us stronger. Grace's speech was broadcast throughout the colony and became a turning point in public opinion. If Richard Nash's own daughter could change her mind, other people could too. Alexander Kane announced the next phase of his plan the following week. "We're going to build something new here on New Eden Colony," he told a packed auditorium. "We're going to create the Stellar Unity Network, a communication system that connects human colonies across the galaxy. The network would allow colonies to share resources, knowledge, and support. Modified humans would work alongside unmodified ones to build and maintain the system. It would be a symbol of what humanity could achieve when people worked together instead of fighting each other. As construction began on the network, something else was happening in the darkness of space. Zephyrian scout ships had been watching New Eden Colony, waiting for the right moment to attack. But as they observed the colony's transformation from division to unity, their reports back to the Empire began to change. The aliens had expected to find a weak, divided community ready for conquest. Instead, they found humans working together with new purpose and determination. 6 months after Sophia's life-saving surgery, New Eden Colony looked like a completely different place. The protests and anger that had divided the community were gone, replaced by cooperation and shared purpose. People who had once refused to speak to each other now worked side by side on projects that benefited everyone. The most visible change was the old St. Michael's Church building. Father Johnson had made the difficult decision to transform it into a community center that welcomed all residents, regardless of their genetic status. The stained glass windows still cast colorful light across the main hall, but now they illuminated people of all kinds coming together. Maria Santos stood in that same hall holding 10-month-old Sophia in her arms. The baby was completely healthy. Now, thanks to Dr. Nathan Cross's surgery, Sophia had grown into a happy child who smiled at everyone she met, as if she understood that she had helped bring her community together. Today was special. It was the day of Sophia's second baptism ceremony, this time with her entire family present and the blessing of the whole community. Father Johnson had asked Father Carlos Martinez, a progressive priest from another colony, to conduct the service. Father Martinez believed that all children deserved to be welcomed into their faith, regardless of their parents' background. Kai Chun sat in the front row, wearing his best clothes and beaming with pride. Next to him sat Dr. Cross, who had decided to stay on New Eden Colony to help establish a new medical research center. Alexander Kane had provided funding for the center, which would study ways to use genetic modifications to improve healthcare. For everyone, the ceremony was beautiful. Father Martinez spoke about love, acceptance, and the strength that comes from diversity. "Sophia represents the future of humanity," he said, looking out at the mixed crowd of modified and unmodified people. "She shows us that our differences make us stronger, not weaker." When the baptism was complete, the entire congregation applauded. But this was just the beginning of the day's celebrations. Outside, the colony was holding its first Unity Day festival, a new tradition that Alexander Kane had helped establish. The festival took place in the central plaza, which had been decorated with banners representing all the different types of work that kept the colony running. There were displays showing how miners, farmers, engineers, doctors, teachers, and others contributed to their shared success. Modified and unmodified workers stood together, explaining their jobs to curious children. Amy Foster, now 21, and studying to become a diplomat, gave a speech about the colony's transformation. 6 months ago, we were a divided community heading toward disaster, she told the crowd. Today, we're an example for human colonies everywhere of what we can achieve when we work together. The highlight of the festival was Alexander Kane's announcement about the Stellar Unity Network. The communication system was finally complete, ready to connect New Eden Colony with dozens of other human settlements across the galaxy. "Today, we send our first message to the galaxy," Alexander said as he stood before a crowd of thousands. "We want to tell other human colonies that unity is possible, that diversity is strength, and that together we can face any challenge. Message was broadcast from a massive transmitter that had been built by teams of modified and unmodified engineers working together. The signal would reach the farthest human colonies within days, carrying news of New Eden's transformation. But Alexander had saved the most important announcement for last. As we celebrate our unity here at home, I want you to know that we face that unity as a test. Our sensors have detected alien ships at the edge of our system. The Zephyrians are coming, just as Captain Brooks warned us they would. A murmur of concern passed through the crowd, but there was no panic. The people of New Eden Colony had spent months preparing for this possibility. Modified workers with enhanced senses had built early warning systems. Unmodified strategists had developed defense plans. Engineers of all types had worked together to strengthen the colony's shields and weapons. 6 months ago, we would have been helpless against this threat, Alexander continued. Our divided community would have fallen easily to any organized attack, but today we're ready. We're united, we're prepared, and we're not going to let anyone destroy what we built together. The defense of New Eden Colony began 3 days later. The Zephyrian fleet arrived with 12 warships, expecting to find a weak, divided human settlement. Instead, they found a coordinated defense that surprised them completely. Modified pilots with enhanced reflexes flew fighter ships alongside unmodified pilots with superior tactical training. Engineers with cybernetic implants worked with traditional mechanics to keep weapon systems running. Enhanced soldiers with improved strength fought beside unmodified troops with better strategic thinking. The battle lasted for 6 hours. Zephyrians had superior numbers, but the humans had something the aliens had not expected: perfect cooperation between people with different abilities. Modified humans could see threats that unmodified humans missed, while unmodified humans could solve problems that modified humans overlooked. When the alien fleet finally retreated, they left behind several damaged ships and a new respect for human determination. The Zephyrian commander sent a message to his superiors. This colony is no longer a suitable target. The humans have achieved unity. Recommend finding easier prey elsewhere. The victory celebration lasted for 3 days. People danced in the streets, shared meals with neighbors they had once avoided, and marveled at what they had accomplished together. Children like Sophia would grow up in a world where genetic modifications were seen as tools for building a better society, not reasons for division. Maria Santos found herself at the center of the celebration, though she still felt amazed by everything that had happened. I just wanted my daughter to be baptized, she told Lisa Rodriguez during an interview. I never imagined it would lead to all this. Alexander Kane reflected on the changes as he watched the festival from his office window. The colony that had once rejected a baby because of her father's genetics had become a beacon of hope for humanity. The transformation had cost him millions of dollars and months of hard work, but it had been worth every effort. The Stellar Unity Network carried news of New Eden's victory to colonies throughout human space. Other settlements began adopting similar policies of inclusion and cooperation. The network became a tool for sharing not just information, but the values that made humanity strong. Dr. Nathan Cross established his research center and began training other doctors to perform the surgeries that had saved Sophia's life. His techniques spread to other colonies, saving hundreds of children whose conditions had previously been untreatable. As Sophia grew older, she learned the story of how her baptism had changed an entire colony. She learned that her father's genetic modifications were not something to be ashamed of, but something to be proud of. She learned that differences between people were not barriers to overcome, but strengths to celebrate. The little girl who had been rejected by a church became a symbol of humanity's potential. In the vast darkness of space, surrounded by alien threats and unknown dangers, humans had learned to embrace their diversity and find strength in their unity. New Eden Colony shone like a star in the darkness, proving that love and acceptance could triumph over fear and hatred. The Millionaire's intervention had changed everything. But the real transformation had come from ordinary people choosing compassion over prejudice, understanding over ignorance, and hope over fear. In the end, humanity's greatest victory was not against alien invaders, but against their own worst instincts.